Let's embroider the Kitty Pride stick and stitch pattern. I'm going to be using the bi flag colors, so I'm going to be splitting my pattern in half since that flag only has 3 colors and I only want 3 cats. This is completely optional. You're going to peel the sticker off of the backing and then set it on the shirt or whatever other item you want to embroider on. Press it down firmly and then grab your embroidery hoop. You're going to unscrew the hoop and take the inner ring and set it behind the material. Position the outer hoop around the inner hoop and fiddle with it until you have the fabric stretch tight but not stretching the fabric. So if you're working with a knit like a t-shirt, be careful as you do this. You don't want to overstretch the fabric. Take your time and get this positioning right. Once you have the position correct, tighten the hoop at the top using the screw, however it's set up on your particular hoop. Now we're going to thread our needle. Embroidery floss is made up of 6 individual strands, and we are only going to be using 2 of those strands today. So take the end of your thread and split apart the strands. Grab 2 of them and then slowly unravel the thread. This may take a little while. The thread likes to twist back together, so just take your time and be patient. Now you're going to thread those 2 strands through the eye of your needle. Once you have your needle threaded, you'll knot the end of your thread using an overhand knot, going once and then a second time for added security. You can go ahead and trim the end of your thread now just to make sure it doesn't get in the way. Now we're going to make a back stitch, starting just about 1/4 of an inch ahead of the end of the line on the cat. You're going to come up from the back to the front, and then you're going to go back to the beginning of the line, and that is your first back stitch. So every back stitch starts where the stitch feels like it ends, and ends where the stitch feels like it starts. And you're going to continue doing that, following the line of the cat as you go along until you hit the end of the first cat and are in that little space in between. At the end of the cat, or when you have about 4 inches of thread left on your embroidery floss, you're going to tie off the thread. So you're going to tie another double overhand knot like you did when you started the thread, but this time we're trying to get it as close as possible to the fabric. In order to do that, you'll tie your knot loosely and then find the spot where the threads overlap and push it up against the fabric. You're going to hold it there with your finger, fiddle around until you get it laying right where you want it, and then pull the thread tight. Do this a second time for added security, and then trim the end of your thread. Now we're moving on to the whipped portion of the whip back stitch. Thread your needle with 2 strands of floss, like you did before, knotting the end, and then bring the needle up at the very end of your back stitching. We are now going to whip the thread around every stitch. So you'll slide the needle through the stitch not catching fabric, just the thread, and then move on to the next stitch. It can help to turn your piece as you do this so that all the whipping stays in the correct direction. You want them all to go in the same direction, so sometimes it's easier to adjust, and you're just going to keep sliding that needle underneath the stitch but not catching the fabric. It can be helpful in some ways to use the back of your needle, the eye of your needle, to slide underneath the thread, because then it's harder for it to catch the fabric. You'll do this all the way back the way you came with the back stitching until you reach the beginning of your piece. Once you've come to the end of the whip stitching, sink your needle and bring it to the back of the project. We're going to tie it off just like we did with the first set of stitches. Tie your double overhand knot, and then you can trim away any of the ending threads. You've finished your first cat. Now you can move on to the next cats in your project. If your project has more colors than cats, you can simply change the colors at any point in the middle of the cat, and that's the end. Your stick and stitch material will wash out with cold water in a sink or in a washing machine, and the embroidery will hold up for a long time. Go forth and wear your pride.